仍未為當年暴力鎮壓抗爭者負上任何責任。至今六四仍是禁語，侵害中國內地、香港、新疆及西藏嘅人權事件從未止息。喺彼岸，曾經每年可以公開紀念六四嘅香港，亦因為國安法同埋23條而被完全禁聲，任何形式以至個人嘅悼念皆被視為犯罪。就喺呢個星期，人權律師周幸彤及其他6個人就因為在網上分享六四嘅貼文而被捕，成為23條立法後嘅首次拘捕，目的就係要封殺六四嘅討論和悼念。仲有更多人因為勇敢發言而失去自由，包括《蘋果日報》創辦人黎智英同埋記錄白紙運動嘅中國紀錄片導演陳品林。天安門鎮壓已經35週年，我們唔單止要紀念當年發生嘅暴行，並哀悼逝去嘅生命，亦要警惕現今中國政權對公民自由嘅壓制，唔單單係直接喺香港粗暴地立法，削減公民權利和自由，以及對新疆維吾爾人犯下明目張膽嘅惡行。中國及香港政權藉出打壓嘅魔爪，伸延至海外離散社群，以監控、騷擾、威嚇嘅手法，引發嚴善效應，跨境打壓海外嘅人權運動。呢個跨境鎮壓嘅現象，主要針對海外華人，包括僑民社會、學生同埋流亡者嘅意見聲音。我哋一陣嘅發言者都會提到呢種恐嚇同騷擾係如何運作，點樣製造寒蟬效應。我哋作為公民社會一員，又應該如何應對？我哋今日嘅發言將會離合過去同埋現在，展示佢哋嘅公民社會公民自由係如何受到跨年代、跨國界嘅打壓。六四天安門鎮壓唔只係歷史，唔係過去式。我哋要記住過去受迫壓嘅受害者，亦要提醒大家35年嚟呢種打壓已經演變出同樣危險嘅新手段。人類對抗權力嘅鬥爭，就係記憶與遺忘嘅抗爭。我們請大家一齊聲援各被囚嘅抗爭者，承傳歷史記憶，延續為人類奮鬥嘅意志。無懼跨境打壓，無忘六四抗爭。Remember Tiananmen. In solidarity against repression. 無懼跨境打壓。In solidarity against repression. 無忘六四抗爭。無忘六四抗爭。Remember Tiananmen. Remember Tiananmen. Without further ado, let me introduce our first speaker. Christopher Mung is a Hong Kong trade unionist and is wanted by the Hong Kong government on a charge of incitement of secession after delivering a speech at a trade union conference. 我哋今日第一位講者蒙兆達係一位香港工運領袖，喺一次工會會議上發表演講後，被香港政府以煽動分裂國家罪名懸紅通緝。
各位，喺今日嘅香港，六四已經成為禁語，連回憶都係有罪嘅。政權將已經被囚禁嘅周幸彤再次拘捕，又拉咗另外6個人，指控佢哋利用敏感日子去煽動仇恨國家。我想問，點解六四咁敏感啊？點解咁驚人提起啊？因為政權心虛，因為政權膽怯，因為政權好害怕，害怕面對當年嘅真相，害怕面對自己當年犯下嘅滔天罪行，係咪？但係無論呢個政權用幾多強橫暴力嘅手段，佢哋永遠刪除唔到人民嘅記憶，佢哋永遠抹走唔到呢一筆血債。因為屠殺人民嘅政權將會永遠被釘喺恥辱之柱上邊，係咪？而終有一日， 我哋深信歷史係會對呢個鎮壓人民嘅政權作出審判嘅，係咪？而家支聯會嘅主席李卓人、兩位副主席何俊仁、周幸彤，因為堅持結束黨專政嘅綱領，係被拘捕囚禁。但我想講，政權審判嘅唔係佢哋三個，而係我哋每一個曾經喺香港6月4號晚上走入維園，點起燭光，守護良知，拒絕遺忘嘅香港人，係咪？但係佢哋三個雖然面對咁惡毒嘅政治審判，佢哋並冇向強權低頭，佢哋堅持悼念6四係無罪嘅。而我哋生活喺海外，既然我哋有自由繼續發聲，我哋更加冇理由放棄。我哋一定會繼續同喺香港受到不義審判嘅人繼續肩並肩同行，係咪？過去每年悼念6四嘅晚會，唔單止係代表咗香港人長年累月嘅堅持，其實亦都係為咗喺中國被禁制悼念嘅人發聲，特別係嗰啲喺鎮壓裏邊死去咗親人子女嘅天安門母親，佢哋每年喺維園嘅點點燭光，喺6四晚會上邊獲得咗支撐落去嘅安慰同埋力量。我想喺度代表大家承諾天安門母親，雖然支聯會已經倒下，雖然6四晚會被禁制，但係佢哋永遠唔會孤軍作戰嘅，係咪？因為我哋仲喺度，雖然我哋散落喺唔同嘅地方，我哋會繼續堅持悼念6四，會繼續堅持追究屠城責任，直至忠義來臨嘅一日，係咪？各位，追究屠城責任唔單止係為咗死者尋求公義，亦都係為咗生者而戰。35年過去，6四仲未過去，因為好多人每一日仍然生活喺專制獨裁嘅陰影底下。喺國安法立法之後，香港人以往享有嘅自由同埋人權已經係被摧殘到體無完膚，而我哋過往多年嚟追求我哋應得嘅民主，換嚟嘅係殘酷無情嘅鎮壓。喺幾日前，我哋好痛心，我哋睇到47人案，我哋好多嘅戰友係被法庭定罪，係莫須有，赤裸裸就係對佢哋爭取民主嘅政治報復。除咗喺香港之外，中共政權喺西藏、新疆、中國大陸好多唔同嘅地方犯下種種違反人權、反人道嘅罪行，罄竹難書。所以我哋今天呼應89學運，追求民主、反抗獨裁嘅訴求，就係要繼續呢一場未完結嘅抗爭，爭取結束壓喺人民頭上嘅專制獨裁，係咪？我哋心裏邊有一個共同嘅夢想，呢個夢想永遠都係唔會死嘅。我哋夢想有一日，我哋可以返到去熱愛嘅土地，呼吸自由空氣。我哋夢想有一日，我哋可以自由咁選舉屬於我哋自己嘅政府。我哋夢想有一日，冇一個人再需要活喺專制獨裁嘅恐懼之下。我哋唔知前邊嘅路有幾遠，但係我深信，只要我哋冇放棄，我哋終有一日係會走到終點嘅，好唔好？好！反抗獨裁，民主必勝，無忘6四，永不放棄。I will try to recap my speech in English. I stand here in solidarity with you against the state repression. June 4 has become a forbidden word, and even memory is a crime in today's Hong Kong. under the political suppression. Zhao Hengtong and the other 6 people were arrested under the accusation of inciting sedition against the state power. We strongly condemn the Hong Kong authorities for their suppression on the voice to ask for justice for the victims of Tiananmen massacre. We will continue to stand firm with the Tiananmen murder. Our fight is not only for the dead, but also for the living. No one should live under the fear of a dictatorship. Everyone should enjoy their freedom and democracy they deserve. That's why we must echo the students' demand in 1989 and carry on this unfinished struggle for democracy. We will fight till the end in solidarity. Thank you.
Next, we have Pei Ching Li, founder of one of our organizer, China Deviant。跟住係有份籌辦今次活動嘅組織 China Deviant 嘅發起人Li Pei Ching。
Thank you for having me here. My name is Pei Ching Li, also known as Apple. I'm the founder of China Deviant, a London-based Chinese diaspora community. Thank you for joining us today to commemorate the Tiananmen Square massacre, a pivotal moment in our history that continues to resonate deeply with us. The Tiananmen massacre is not just a chapter in our history. It is a stark reminder of the lengths to which authoritarian regime will go to maintain power. On June 4th, what are you doing? 是演的。完了，流程错了。Sorry, that was a mistake. Like that was supposed to be part of the show, the performance, and but the timing was wrong. So please don't be worried. Yes. So the Tiananmen massacre is not just a chapter in the history. On June 4th, 1989, thousands of peaceful protesters calling for political reform and freedom were met with brutal military force. Hundreds, if not thousands, lost their lives. Their courage and sacrifice should not be seen as distant memories, but as a vivid warning of what can happen when freedom is suppressed. Today, as we remember this atrocity, we must recognize that it is not a relic of the past. The suppression of dissident, the denial of basic human rights, and the brutal enforcement of the authoritarian control are ongoing realities. The struggle for freedom and justice that those brave souls embody is still very much alive. That makes you wonder if plain paper movement would be wiped out on the same day in the future. We see echoes of Tiananmen in various forms of transnational repression today. China's authorities continue to monitor and intimidate those who speak out against the regime, even beyond China's border. From harassment of activists in the diaspora to cyber attack and threat against families back home, the tactics are varied, but the intent is clear: silence dissent at all costs. These actions are not just attacks on individuals, but on the principle of freedom and democracy. The intimidation tactics used against activities like us are designed to instill fear and suppress our voices. They aim to make us believe that we are alone, that resistance is futile, and the world is not watching. But we're not alone, and our voices will not be silenced. The struggle for freedom and human rights is ongoing. Tiananmen is not just the past atrocity, but a present threat to anyone who dare to dream of a free society. It is crucial that we pay attention to these issues, support those who are oppressed, and demand safe space for Chinese citizens to voice their concerns without fear. We must raise awareness about the ongoing surveillance and political oppression of Chinese citizens abroad. We must urge democratic society to protect the rights and safety of these who seek refuge within their borders. By doing so, we honor the memory of those who perished in the Tiananmen and reaffirm our commitment to their cause. Let us honor the memory of those who perished at Tiananmen by continuing your fight for a just and democratic society. Let their sacrifice inspire us to stand up against tyranny and support one another in the pursuit of truth and freedom. Thank you.
First of all, we apologize for the disruption. That was actually supposedly part of the performance art performance later in the schedule, but one of the actors we mixed up the scheduling, so that was happening. But what you see, the reaction from us are real. Our fears of transnational repression are real. This is a really real threat, and we are under it every day. 頭先解釋一下啦，我哋頭先嗰個咧其實係原本係 China Deviant 嘅表演藝術嘅一個環節嚟嘅，不過咧佢哋就其中一位演員就搞錯咗個時間表，就早咗表演。咁但係咧，我哋頭先你哋見到我哋各位嘅表情嘅反應咧係真嘅。我哋每日咧都係要面對住呢個跨境鎮壓嘅威脅，呢啲威脅咧係真實存在，而無時無刻咧亦都唔會放過我哋嘅。Now we have Chaohua Desmond, the Chief Executive of Amnesty International UK。我哋而家有請國際特赦組織英國分會嘅行政總裁 Chaohua Desmond。
Thank you, my friends. There can be no better place, no more important place for us to be loud and showing our solidarity than in the centre of power, watched by great figures of history and freedom and a crossroads of the world, because we must speak loudly to the world. We're here to commemorate, we're here to show solidarity, but not just with the memory of 1989, but also with our fellow citizens in China today. The fact that speaking about June 4th, 1989 has been made taboo in China speaks volumes about how desperate the authorities are, in the extent to which they are determined to deny this dark history and try and wipe it from the collective memory and from the public sphere. But that is why it is all the more important what we are doing here today, and why so many people around the world are also so importantly remembering and speaking in the way that we are today. We must shine a light on that history. We must say that our collective memory is alive and respects not just the memory of those who were killed on the 4th of June 1989, but the millions of people standing up for human rights today at the very moment I am speaking to you and standing here in China and Hong Kong. For of course, while there is a climate of fear which aims to gag people not just in China, but also in Hong Kong, and deny them their right to protest and speak freely, it was of course only earlier this month that we saw the Court of Appeal in Hong Kong uphold the government's banning of the song Glory to Hong Kong. It was only just a few months ago, in March, that in Hong Kong we saw the passage into law of the new national security legislation known as Article 23, a law which includes sweeping definitions of national security adopted from mainland Chinese law, significant expansions of the definition of espionage, and significant jail sentences for criticising the government, contrary to Hong Kong's human rights obligations and not proportionate to any need for national security. And just 3 days ago, we saw an unprecedented mass conviction in the most ruthless illustration of how Hong Kong's national security law is being weaponised to silence dissent. It represents now a near total purge of political opposition and highlights just how quickly, in such a short time, we have seen the disintegration of human rights in Hong Kong. Just this week also, we at Amnesty International published data showing that in 2023, China remained the world's leading executioner, with the greatest use of the death penalty. And that is true even when the extent of the use of the death penalty remains unknown, as this data remains a classified secret. And as Amnesty revealed in a report last month, we increasingly see Chinese and Hong Kong students studying abroad, including here in the UK, our own country, living in fear of intimidation, harassment of themselves and their families, and surveillance as Chinese authorities seek to prevent them from engaging with sensitive or political issues while they are overseas. The Chinese authorities flat out refuse to acknowledge fundamental facts, presenting the repression of Uyghurs as an alleged counter to terrorism, or the suppression of civic space in Hong Kong as somehow providing stability in the city. But that is why it is so important that we're here today and all speaking so loudly, because it sends a message. It sends a message that the world is not convinced when the Chinese government seeks to mislead the world about the suppression of human rights experienced by its own citizens, whether on that bloody night in Tiananmen Square 35 years ago, or today in Tianjin, Tibet, Hong Kong, or abroad. While China consistently seeks to gaslight the global community, denying the scope and scale of violations of human rights, well documented not just by Amnesty, but also by bodies such as the United Nations, it is also trying to offer up its anti-human rights approach as a model for others. But by being here today, we are saying to our fellow human beings, whether they are in Tibet, Hong Kong, around China, or here, that our voices have not been silenced. Even as you are in prison, even as you are detained, even as you are under surveillance, or even as you are in exile, we hear you and we are with you. For as we stand here today, 35 years after June 1989, what we are saying loudly and clearly is that even when it takes years, we will keep working together, and ultimately dissent can never be silenced, and truth and human rights will ultimately prevail. Thank you.
Thank you, our speakers, a wonderful speech. We are now going to have a moment of silence in commemoration of the brave people who lost their life 35 years before in the pursuit of freedoms and democratic reform. You may close your eyes and think about the words you would like to say to them. They are not forgotten. 今年係天安門鎮壓35週年，我哋而家會為35年前追求民主自由、社會公義嘅死難者默哀64秒。你可以閉上眼睛，心中諗住可以同佢哋講嘅説話，我哋冇忘記到佢哋。Our 64 seconds of silence morning will start now，而家開始。Please welcome to the stage now our performers from China Deviant for the performing arts with a piece of music by Yin Fei, a composer a singer, songwriter advocating for human rights。以下落嚟，我哋會請 China Deviant 嘅表演者上台。亦都我哋會請嚟一個為人權發聲嘅創作歌手燕飛為我哋伴奏㗎。
Now we will present our art piece for this year's June 4th commemoration. It represents China's authoritarian regime, and it's increasing censorship in China, both domestic. What are you doing? Let go of me! No!
咁佢哋而家進行緊舞台劇，咁主要係講緊，主要講緊一個學生，即係中國學生喺海外嘅言論自由啦，就喺度公開發言啦。咁有一個係扮演即係中共特務嘅一個演員咧，就衝上去騷擾同埋打呢個女學生嘅。咁喺現場，因為我哋都有警察喺現場啦，咁警察以為呢件事係真嘅，咁就即刻衝咗過嚟。英國警察就制止嗰個即係所謂嘅演員啦。咁其實就而家就除咗嗰個舞台劇喺進行當中咧，都即係主辦方都要同警察即係去解釋翻嗰個事件咯。
We now have a recording of Miss Chaohua Wang, who is a freelance essayist in modern Chinese literature at the University of California. She was a committee member of the Beijing Autonomous Association of College Students in 1989. Her recording has been made in Chinese, but there is an English summary at the end. 我哋而家會播放黃超華嘅錄音。黃超華係流亡嘅前六四學運領袖，現居於美國。佢用普通話錄咗一段音， 後面我哋會用英文去撮要嘅。
亲爱的朋友们，首先感谢主办方给我这个机会与大家交流。今天我们聚会为六四亡灵点亮烛光，纪念35年前英勇抗暴的中国民众，纪念所有在强权政府残暴镇压中无辜倒下的死难者、伤残者，感念他们的亲人家属多年来承受的苦痛，尤其感念天安门母亲群体35年来的坚韧不拔。六四亡灵是压在每一个良知尚存的中国人心底的沉重，时时叩问我们追求光明的决心和勇气。天安门母亲群体是映照良知和公义的镜子，在党国至上、经济至上、民族主义疯狂出击的恶劣环境中，六四亡灵和天安门母亲为我们保存了最可珍惜宝贵的民族精神。正因为如此，中共政权不但动用正规国防军武力镇压本国和平抗议的学生和民众，还要抹去一切与六四有关的集体记忆。抹去这些记忆，就同时掩盖了过去30年中国经济的腾飞是建立在六四血腥镇压基础上这个关键事实。借助流血暴力制造的普遍社会恐惧，才产生出所谓必须坚持中共的领导才能维持稳定的谎言。1989年的社会运动是中国改革开放以来民众公开要求政治权利、公民权利的最大规模的抗争。之后30年，香港支持大陆爱国民主运动联合会、支联会年年纪念六四时，都会提出还权于民的口号，就是继承89民主运动的基本立场，直指中共政权合法性来源的不公不义。支联会的存在早已成为中共当局的眼中钉，必欲除之而后快。香港经过2019年反送中修例的大规模抗争和2020年港版国安法实施，越来越多香港抗争者也意识到，对抗中共统治，坚持还权于民是我们的共同目标。89民运和六四抗暴是我们共享的精神家园。六四血腥镇压为中共拒绝民众政治诉求，持续使用国家暴力处理社会危机打开先例。任何一个国家的经济腾飞阶段都必然伴随着社会关系变动的巨大震荡。在中国，这些社会关系变动牺牲的永远是底层民众和普通老百姓。改制下岗的工人、农民工、留守儿童、失业青年、沦为房奴车奴的中青年，与官员发生利益冲突的经营者等等等等，不一而足。但是无论社会怎样震荡，一次次的社会危机却从来没有动摇过中共权贵的政治经济地位。只有内部权力斗争能够导致权贵的失宠倒台。所谓的反贪腐从来没有为民众带来更多发声的政治渠道，也没有创造出更活跃的公共空间。恰恰相反，习近平上台以来10几年的反贪腐不但没有有效遏制官员腐败，反而导致对民众更严苛的规训。六四之后的每一次社会危机都会被中共政权指控为受少数人或外国势力煽动。中共当局从来拒绝接受一个现代社会里公民有权提出正当的政治诉求。多年来，迫于国家暴力的恐吓，民众退而选择散布、围观等迂回表达。当这些被严控之后，特别是当疫情期间清零政策下的高压管控侵犯到了日常生活的每个角落，高压锅终于爆炸，出现了所有人都没有预料到的白纸抗争。同样出乎当局意料的是，白纸抗争期间人们喊出的口号包括了向1989年天安门抗争致敬的声音。 在30多年严密封锁之后，人们并没有忘记我们共同的集体记忆。如今，当局又在故伎重演，企图抹杀人们对于疫情风控的记忆，对于清零政策的记忆，对于白纸抗争的记忆。纪念六四是悼念亡灵，是呼唤正义，也是维护集体记忆的实践。天安门母亲告诉我们，集体记忆是由每一个活生生的人合成的，每个倒下的人都不是简单的死亡数字，无论他是倒在6·4清晨的长安街，还是3月10日的拉萨街头，是在新疆的集中营，还是在上海的方舱。感谢各位，让我们一起纪念亡灵。我们没有忘记，我们永远不会忘记。
Before I give a summary of Wang Chaohua's speech, I would like to ask people who are standing in the front, would you like to sit down so that the people at the back could see the stage as well, please? 如果坐前邊嘅朋友可唔可以坐低咧？我哋後邊嘅人可以睇到台前嘅嘢。Thank you very much. The following is the summary of Wang Chaohua speech. Today, we are here to commemorate the people killed just because they are exercising their basic rights on June 4, 1989, in Tiananmen, Beijing. We also pay our respect to the Tiananmen martyrs whose perseverance over 35 years taught us what the fight for justice really means. The Chinese government has tried to erase any memories of Tiananmen crackdown, and now they do the same on the zero-COVID lockdown, or the 2019 Hong Kong protests, or the Tibetans' resistance, or the Uyghurs' suffering. However, when the white paper protests erupted in 2022, we heard shouting by the crowds paying tributes to their 1989 predecessors. To commemorate June 4th is an important act to preserving our collective memory in every individual, no matter from when and where. We are here, we are not forgotten. We will never forget. Our next speaker is Mr. Feng Chao, who is the Executive Director of Human Rights in China and the President of Humanitarian China. He was one of the student leaders during the 1989 Tiananmen protests. After the Tiananmen crackdown, he was arrested, imprisoned for a year, and forced into exile in the US over his role in the student movement. 我哋以下落嚟會請到周鋒鎖先生，佢係流亡前6·4嘅學運領袖，中國人權現任嘅執行主任，人道中國共同創辦人。喺6·4天安門鎮壓後，佢曾被通緝、被捕，最終被囚禁1年後流亡美國，繼續人權運動嘅。
Thank you for coming today. As we know, in Hong Kong, it's a crime to commemorate like this. And the national security law, like 23, Article 23 means that everyone here could be a target of persecution by this totalitarian regime in Beijing. 谢谢大家，今天我们在这里纪念6·4 35周年。I am Executive Director of Human Rights in China and the President of Humanitarian China. I was a student leader 35 years ago on Tiananmen Square. I participated in the protest and organized the broadcasting station on Tiananmen Square. But I never imagined I was number 5 on the most wanted list by the Chinese government after the bloody crackdown. I was shocked, but I was also very proud. I remember this was the first time under Communist China that millions of people went to Tiananmen Square to cry out their dream for free and democratic China. And not only in Beijing, where all walks of society came out to support, including policemen, soldiers, all over China, hundreds of cities. The call of freedom reverberates, and the whole world watches. In Taiwan, in Hong Kong, that's the first time that Chinese democracy, that's something we all can be proud of. Even after the massacre, what happened on Tiananmen Square contributed to the eventual fall of the Berlin Wall. That's something we all can celebrate today. For me, I will never forget. All kinds of people want to speak for the first time, even though they were silent because of the repression. And even the government-owned newspapers for a few days were covering the protests as truthfully as possible. Someone in Taiwan told me that at that time he believed that there was more freedom from what he heard than in Taiwan. But unfortunately, CCP took the wrong path with the brutal, senseless massacre. China took on a dark path. That's why we are witnessing all the brutal repression today in Hong Kong, in the Uyghur concentration camps, in the Tibetan region. And that's why today's China is threatening Taiwan, a liberal democracy. We are here today. We must remember Wang Weiping. She was an intern doctor, just graduated. When she heard about the gunshots massacre, she went immediately to help. She was shot trying to rescue someone else who was wounded at Muxidi. We must remember Wang Nan. He was a high school student. He took a camera with him, trying to record what was happening. He was shot on the head. Actually, this helmet was on display in Hong Kong at the Tiananmen Museum a few years ago. But the martial law troops in cold blood refused medical service for him. He died while many people watched helplessly. This kind of brutality is not accident. This is not the first time that CCP killed its people like this. But the whole world was watching. And that's why we all know what happened. We must remember Lu Peng was shot dead when the troops shoot indiscriminately at the busiest place in the capital of Beijing. He was only 9 years old, and he wasn't the youngest dead. We must remember the Tiananmen mothers. We support their call for truth, justice, and repatriation. We must remember that's why China became today's China. Just today, President Zelensky of Ukraine talked about China helping Russia. This is a threat to everyone in Europe, everyone here, everyone in the world. Just a few weeks ago, Putin visited Tiananmen Square. Now, Xi Jinping and Putin, Russia and Communist China, they are the evil axis we must confront. 35 years ago, Gorbachev was visiting Tiananmen Square. When he talked with then the General Secretary of CCP, Zhao Ziyang, they were partners in opening and reform. Unfortunately, the massacre purged CCP of everyone who is even a little bit open-minded. Jiang Zemin was chosen as a successor for Deng Xiaoping because he was the first to shut down a newspaper that was supporting the student on Tiananmen Square. Hu Jintao was chosen as Jiang Zemin's successor because Hu Jintao was fully armed in March on the street of Tibet in the first martial law, which was actually designed as a practice for the martial law in Beijing. Xi Jinping, nobody knew about him then, but his wife was known for singing to support the troops on Tiananmen Square. They have blood on their hands. We are here today. We must also remember what a different China could be, a free and a democratic China. At that time, we were inspired by the Solidarity Union in Poland. We want to call our student union Solidarity Student Union. And on the very day of the massacre, there was an election in Poland for the first time. Even though it was rigged, Solidarity Union won, surprisingly. That's what could happen to China. Just imagine a free and a democratic China today. How beautiful that would be. That's why every voice today counts. We must all work together to bring in this hope of free and a democratic China. Thank you. Let me show a few things that I have brought with me. This was a blood-stained tower from Tiananmen Square 35 years ago. Someone was shot there at the very place that I was. This tower was used to wipe the blood. This is evidence of the murder on Tiananmen Square of the innocent student. This has been kept for 33 years in China until it was brought to me last year. It is also a sign of life and hope. This t-shirt was made by the students on Tiananmen Square. In Chinese, it says, democracy and freedom. This is why today so many people still remember. Because of Hong Kong, we are always thankful for Hong Kong. Thank you. Okay. Do we still have more? No, that's it. Okay, thank you.
Apologize for the music playing earlier. Next, please welcome Ms. Shen-Yi Lee. She is the convener of Taiwan Democracy UK and a member of Formosa Taiwan. She's a student activist active on various human rights issues such as LGBTQ plus social economic justice and anti-authoritarian regimes. She's now advocating for no discussion, no democracy Taiwan Parliament reform global campaign. 以下落嚟，我哋請到嘅係李宣儀小姐，佢係英國青鳥行動嘅負責人，亦都係倫敦港台嘅成員之一。佢係一位學生社運者，係倡議不同嘅人權主題，包括 LGBTQ+、社會經濟正義、反極權專制。佢而家倡議緊嘅係沒有討論、不是民主嘅倫敦反國會濫權行動。有請。
Hello, thank you everyone. Thank you for inviting me. I'm from Taiwan. I'm Taiwanese. Since I think some people might be feeling more comfortable if I speak in Chinese, so I will speak like half Mandarin and half English in this speech. And I cannot say I'm the representative of Taiwan, but at least I can represent part of Taiwan young people. Now in Taiwan, I always say we need to stand with Hong Kong and we need to stand with Chinese deviants. We need to stand with them. I try to promote this. And I try to connect the people overseas to have an overseas connection and the global actions to resist the CCP. Recently, the CCP has started the military drills around Taiwan Ocean. They try to block Taiwan in a military ways and also in the international involvement. They try to block us from WHO, the World Health Organizations. They also block us to join many international societies, associations, and also lots of organizations. They don't want to let us use the name of Taiwan. They deny us to be a country. And also, the democratic countries are afraid to say Taiwan is a country. Ridiculous. So today, in this time, the Tiananmen Square event, I need to let people know, and the Taiwanese citizens knows, how terrible the CCP is. And we need to take down the CCP to tell them they are keep causing the sabotage of freedom and democracy. They need to free the Hong Kong prisoners. Now the situation in Hong Kong is getting more severe and severe. And it will also influence Taiwan. And it will cause the international interference. And I have told the people in my country, I told the Taiwanese, we need to gather together, we need to organize, we need to stand with Hong Kong, we need to support Hong Kongers. And we need to support and free the Chinese people. Even if Chinese people, the Chinese prisoners, they are out of freedom. They are still staying in the prisons. And we, Taiwan, we are a free country. We need to stand with them and protect ourselves as well. So recently, why I'm doing the protest? Because of the interference from the CCP, and also because they are trying to passing a ridiculous law in Taiwan. So that's why they just mentioned I'm doing no discussion, not democracy demonstration. I should let you know some details, but it might be a little bit complex. So I'll just make it short. And I will speak in both Mandarin and English. So in this protest, the first concern, 没有民主，没有民主，没有讨论，没有民主。他们现在就是国民两党，以黑箱、以国会改革之名行黑箱之实，强行通过法案，在5月28号三读已经通过了。那三读通过，他们现在就是要逼迫总统直接宣示法案。那现在民进党要进行大法官释宪。那在大法官释宪之前呢，我们需要集结众多民意，让大法官可以尊重民意，做出符合民意的裁决。所以我們需要集結更多群眾，所以我才號召了全球海外串聯遍地開花行動，以倫敦為發源，進行海外的抗爭。那我們現在目前已經跟美西的團體，美國洛杉磯做串聯，然後紐約的時代廣場也會有很大的一個 banner， 然後還有溫哥華香港組織，香港人挺台灣，香港人挺台灣民主。溫哥華的香港人組織已經跟我們串聯起來了，所以現在目前有倫敦、溫哥華，還有洛杉磯，還有紐約做串聯。接下來第三點訴求就是我剛才提到的，現在台灣面臨的是內憂外患，我們必須一起抵制中共。中共不斷的軍機擾台，然後一直阻撓台灣加入國際組織，各種打壓，各種否定台灣主權。甚至連民主國家都不敢承認台灣是個國家，豈有此理？甚至現在還有台灣本土企業和台灣本土政黨想要跟中國共產黨合作，豈有此理？還要強行通過法案，豈有此理？可以。So now I'll use English to demonstrate our three concerns in this protest. The first one is about no discussion, not democracy. So the KMT and the TTP are using the name of Parliament reformation to black box the law, to pass the law, and to abuse the power, to stand on the top of the Taiwan political system, and to disregarding the people's rights. We are Taiwanese citizens. We need to stand up. We need to have the overseas connections. We need to stand with Hong Kong and the free Chinese people to have a big global actions, to stand together, to fight for the freedom and democracy. And then, it's a democratic and foreign interference. We need to receive CCP together. We need to, not afraid of the TTP's threats, and that Taiwan stand firmly internationally to stand on our position to support the Asian free country. Thank you. Thank you. We support Taiwan democracy. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Feng Shuozhou and Xunyi Li, for your powerful speech. Stop repression in China and Taiwan. Stop repression in China and Taiwan. Stop repression in China and Taiwan. Stop repression of Tibetans and Uyghurs. Stop repression of Tibetans and Uyghurs. Human rights are universal. Human rights are universal. Human rights are universal. 同一世界，同一人權。同一世界，同一人權。同一世界，同一人權。June 4th, we will never forget. June 4th, we will never forget. June 4th, we will never forget. 無忘六四。 薪火相傳，毋忘六四，薪火相傳，毋忘六四，薪火相傳。We are now going to play some music that holds deep meaning to the June 4th collaboration. 我哋而家會播一啲同六四有深切關係嘅音樂。
Hi everyone, I'm Impi. I composer, singer-songwriter who grew up in China and came to the UK in 2018 to study. And later I actually found myself in exile simply because I performed some songs that the Chinese government doesn't like. Last year, on 4th of June, I released a song called It's My Duty in memory of the Tiananmen protests and massacre and white people movement and human rights defenders whose names are erased by the regime for 35 years. And after that, my family in China was harassed by the police. However, the more transnational repression I experienced, the more I wanted to speak up, because silence can never protect us. And today, in memory of the Tiananmen protests and massacre, a memory which has been suppressed by the regime for 35 years, I want to perform a song called Memory is a Crime by the Hong Kong singer Anthony Wang. This is my favorite song depicting post-Tiananmen era. As we remember, Hong Kong was the only place that held a large candlelight vigil for Tiananmen massacre victims for 30 consecutive years. This was possible because Hong Kong used to have vibrant civil societies before the Beijing regime dismantled it in 2019. And the civil society fostered so many songs like this, which empowered me tremendously when I was politically depressed. So I will sing 我已有罪, Memory is a Crime.
佢用廣東話唱。
現在又問他，可悔當天走太前，道路負 壞了不敢涉險。現在若問我，怎會這麼想紀念？連環未過總有意。如珠光都有盡，終人刻多幾十年。如傷疤都有年，未變臉。回憶即使有罪，真相怎麼敢無言？歷史假使有人定被發現，橫聽不必答辯，只怕蒼山很茫然，後土不知等於生面無亂。歷史自動向前，輾轉翻差30年，如跟滄桑笑臉，我們從前。若歸順，為什麼vẫn祭奠？願廣場上這麼多告別，無需要是誰造就壯烈？願廣場上聲音不會滅。Thank you.
Thank you for the performance. Our next speaker is Tsung-chen, Senior Analyst of Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China, IPAC. She's a political and digital rights activist from Hong Kong, focusing on Hong Kong human rights, data security, and the United Fundwork Department. 以下我哋會請嚟來自香港嘅Tsung-chen，佢係對華政策跨國協會聯盟議會聯盟嘅高級分析員。佢嘅研究範疇包括香港人權狀況、數碼保安同埋中共統一戰線工作部嘅活動。有請。
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be speaking here to you all. June 4th, I've always talked about June 4th as a lesson to learn from. A reminder to all of us what the Chinese Communist Party really is. An authoritarian regime that would set its army on its own people who were asking for freedom and democracy. Yet, the students were not deterred by it. Citizens like Apple, Mr. Zhou, are not deterred by it. They were not and have not been taken over by their sense of powerlessness, even though we barely hear from China about what's actually happening inside in terms of resilience. The CCP has shown us again and again, it is nothing but a brutal regime. I ask myself almost every other day, how did Hong Kong become what it is now? But most of the time, I'm not asking for a geopolitical or historical answer. We, when I say we, I mean mainly myself and probably some of you as well, are just whinging about why my life has turned upside down. I want my life back. I want the privilege to be able to see politics sometimes as something outside of my normal routine. But people in jail, the 47 that were convicted just a few days ago, reminds us constantly the reality we live in. Being deprived of our roots, banished from our homes. It is painful. We feel powerless as we cannot change anything. We know they are lying, but they can just lie blatantly in our face and get away with it. But we should not be taken over by our powerlessness. Hong Kong is not like what Havel described as a post-totalitarian right now. We get to keep our moral judgment, at least secretly. Instead of everyone having to plead their allegiance loudly to Beijing, the government wants us to feel small, unimportant, and powerless. They want us to feel like that we are unable to change anything. But is that true? Is that true that we cannot change anything? Are we to be taken over by our sense of powerlessness? Margaret Mung, a veteran democratic activist, once said, 你有無力感係因為你想有無力感，咁就乜都唔使做。You feel powerless because you want to feel powerless, and therefore you can justify doing nothing. Is it the government that induces our feeling of powerlessness, or is that we enjoy and prefer feeling powerlessness? When we praised the students in Tiananmen Square 35 years ago, when we praised Gwyneth Hall or Chao Hang-tong for their remarks in court, do we see them as people doing things that are beyond our capabilities? Do we say to ourselves, we are small potatoes, too unimportant to make a difference? Or do we think to ourselves, 世事都被我看透, I'm smart enough to know that resistance will not make a difference, so why bother? Or do we think pessimistically to ourselves, any kind of small progress is seen as paving the way to another crackdown? People are going to be arrested, just like the team who is supporting Chao Hang-tong was a few days ago, and justify another day curling up in bed, grieving for the people who are suffering. I'm not saying grieving or taking care of ourselves are not good things to do, but we are always unaware of the fact that we do have a choice, passive or active, optimistic or pessimistic. We create an impact on the world. The question we have to constantly ask ourselves is, now what? What can I do? Have you registered to vote in July? Will you open the door when a candidate comes knocking on your door, and would you sit down and tell him or her that China is your prime concern and you expect him as your representative to toughen up against China? Will you tell your candidate the reason why our city is in the state that it is in is because the UK has failed to honor its promise that's made under the Sino-British Joint Declaration, the promises that it has made to Hong Kongers? And the VNO scheme is nothing but a surrender policy. It's not accountability. Will you tell the candidate we cannot even represent ourselves because BNO holders cannot run for election even though we are British nationals? One thing I've learned from students on Tiananmen Square in 1989 is to be unapologetic. Be proud as we are, as Uyghurs, as Tibetans, as Taiwanese, as Chinese, and as Hong Kongers. We should not be overwhelmed by our senses of powerlessness. In 2020, Gwyneth Hall said, 一年前的6月9日之所以改變了整個香港，正是因為那一日，香港人放下有用冇用的爭拗，決定了，即使只能在死前掙扎2下，我都絕不投降。The reason why 9th of June 2019 changed the entire Hong Kong is because on that day, Hong Kongers decided to abandon the considerations of something being impactful or not. We have decided, even though we are only struggling before death, we will not surrender. We are here to demand accountability, freedom, and democracy, and we stand by it, regardless of what's to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Next coming on stage is a UK solicitor who was originally a barrister in Hong Kong. He was the former convener of the Progressive Lawyers Group in Hong Kong. 跟住上台嘅係一位英國律師，佢之前喺香港係一位大律師，亦都係法政司會嘅前召集人李安然先生 Billy Lee。
Thank you for giving me a chance to speak here. Because this is no longer free to speak in Hong Kong. As the MC just said, I was a barrister in Hong Kong, and I no longer practice as a barrister. The reason is quite simple. Because I don't have any confidence or faith in the legal system in Hong Kong anymore. So I come to a place that I can feel I can speak freely, and I can be a lawyer that can help and serve my client without fear. So when we talk about lawyers, of course, we will talk about the legal system in Hong Kong. When around the world, the media or people, activists, NGOs criticize Hong Kong, the legal system, the Hong Kong government would always suggest that they still have judicial independence as an excuse to show that any conviction, any sentence will be legitimate. But the problem is, when we talk about judicial independence, what does it mean? It means the judiciary works independently for justice. We need judicial independence as a shield, as a protection, to protect us from the unlawful activities of the government against our rights. So when we say judicial independence, we are not saying the judge, they are acting independently to convict the people for upholding their own basic rights. We are saying the judge to protect us from the government. That's the meaning, that's the purpose for the judicial independence. But now in Hong Kong, we see the courts not only helping the government to convict activists, to convict citizens for speaking peaceful criticism against the government. The courts are not only doing that, they are also imposing very harsh sentence against the citizens. And please make no mistake, the United Nations has repeatedly and unequivocally to say that the national security law in Hong Kong is arbitrary. Hong Kong government should not apply this anymore. They should repeal the law and no longer not to use it against anyone in Hong Kong. So when the court used the law to convict people in Hong Kong, they are helping the government to suppress our basic rights. And I want to give you an example. The court is not only helping the government, the court is acting way beyond in suppressing the rights according to the agenda of the government. An example is that the final court, the top court in Hong Kong last year, when the court considered whether when someone admitted guilty, accepted they are guilty under national security law, whether they should be offered a 1/3 reduction of sentence. And the top court said no. That was the very fundamental principle in any common law legal system. When someone pleads guilty, they accept their guilt, they should offer a reduction of sentence. This is to show, to encourage the defendants because they are remorseful, we encourage them to gain a new life, to correct themselves, not to commit the same crime anymore. But the Hong Kong top court said no. Even you accept you are guilty under the national security law, we will take away your basic rights to have the 1/3 sentence reduction. So you can see the Hong Kong courts, they are not only fulfilling the wishes of the Hong Kong government, they work beyond that. So when we say the Hong Kong courts, they act independently. They are acting independently against justice. They're working way beyond the Hong Kong government asks. But when we say the Hong Kong legal system, when we say, oh, how bad it is, we cannot avoid talking about Zhao Hangtong. Because when the Hong Kong legal system is suppressing the people there, there is someone still fighting in the judicial system for the basic rights of anyone still in Hong Kong. While we can still speak freely here, Zhao Hangtong, although she is locked up by the Hong Kong government, by the judicial system, she still come forward in the court to speak on behalf of us, to speak on behalf of the victims of the Tiananmen massacre. So when I see the picture of the flyers that in your hands, her smiling face, how peaceful she is, but at the same time, how unwavering she is. She reminds me when I was in Hong Kong, when I was one of the audience in the candlelight vigil at Victoria Park. She was on the stage. She was asking us not to give up. Now, although the Hong Kong government keep on continuously to use different kind of crimes, trying to shut her mouth, trying to silence her, she's still speaking for every one of us. So I would like to hope every one of you, nothing can stop Zhao Hangtong. But at the same time, because she has the power to speak on behalf of us, she can gain strength from us. So I ask every one of us to show solidarity to Zhao Hangtong, to tell her, we will not forget her. We will not forget the victims of the Tiananmen massacre. For the people she has fighting for years. And we come together, this image will be shown on the press, and she will see this image, and she will gain strength from us. So thank you everyone, thank you.
光復香港，光復香港 ，Fight for freedom， Fight for freedom， 光復香港，光復香港 ，Fight for freedom， Fight for freedom。We will now hear a pre-recorded message from Professor Tomoko Ako, teaching Sociology and China Study in the University of Tokyo. She's the board member of Asian Commons and the producer of the documentary She's in Jail, a film dedicated to Zhao Hangtong and her June 4th campaign. 以下落嚟會播放一段由阿古智子教授嘅對話。佢係喺東京大學教社會學同埋中國研究嘅。佢係 Asian Commons 嘅 board member 啦，亦都係幸同在監獄紀錄片嘅監製。
Hello everyone, this is Tomoko Ako talking from the University of Tokyo. This year marks the 35th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square protest and massacre. Ideally, rallies should be held around the world and in China every year to commemorate those who died in the protests. In addition, it is necessary to continue activities to verify what happened in the protests and why it occurred. However, in Hong Kong, where large-scale memorial rallies were held every year, even the word Tiananmen Square protest cannot be used. On May 28th, Zhao Hangtong, the protagonist of the film She's in Jail, became the first person to be arrested in connection with the National Security Bill passed in this March to crack down on vandalism and foreign interference in Hong Kong. The reason given was that she targeted so-called sensitive date and posted on social media, spreading hatred against the Chinese government. In addition to her, 5 others have been arrested, including her mother. If found guilty, the 6 could face up to 7 years in prison. We must learn from history. We must think current issues, learning from history. And we can connect the past and the present to the future. Commemorating the victims of the Tiananmen Square protest and uncovering the truth of the incident will not darken our future. I believe that we should continue to be proud of our work to commemorate and memorize the Tiananmen Square protest. Thank you.
阿古哲子教授嘅信息咧係關於鄒幸彤佢嘅母親同埋其他被第23條逮捕嘅社運人士，佢哋被逮捕嘅原因僅僅只係發布咗有關6四事件嘅信息。喺呢一刻冇請我哋舉起我哋嘅橫額、我哋嘅標語、我哋嘅抗議藝術品、我哋嘅紙張，無論上面有冇口號，而表達我哋同鄒幸彤以及所有因行使言論自由和抗議權利而被逮捕或拘留嘅人嘅人權抗爭者同埋社運人士嘅團結。Now, before we continue, let's raise up our banners, our placards, our protest artwork, our paper with our slogans to show our solidarity with Zhao Hengtong and all the human rights defenders and activists who are being arrested or in custody due to exercising their rights for freedom or expression and protest rights. We'd also like the speakers to come forward to the stage. Yeah, with all the speakers to come to join us for our photos moment. We want to have a photo with everyone in the audience showing our solidarity with all the human rights defenders. We're going to take a photos. If you're uncomfortable with this, please cover your face or request a surgical mask from the steward. If you have a banner or a placard with you, please hold it up high. We're going to get a shot from the camera over somewhere. Where's the cameraman? In front of the stage. With those sitting on the edge of the stage, in front of the stage, where you can get in closer to the center, then we can get you in the picture as well. 如果坐喺旁邊嘅朋友可以向中間靠攏嘅話，我哋可以盡量影得到大家。如果你哋唔方便入鏡嘅話咧，你哋可以同我哋嘅 steward 攞口罩啦，又或者暫時離開廣場中間嘅部分。In solidarity with Zhao Hengtong. In solidarity with Zhao Hengtong. In solidarity with all human rights defenders. In solidarity with all human rights defenders.
In solidarity with all human rights defenders.
釋放鄒幸彤！
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 釋放所有政治犯！
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 Free all human rights defenders in China and in Hong Kong now.
Free all human rights
defenders in China and Hong Kong now. Free all human rights defenders in China and Hong Kong now.
Free all human rights defenders in China and Hong Kong now.
Freedom of expression is human right.
Freedom of expression is human rights.
Freedom of expression is human right.
Freedom of expression is human rights.
Protest rights are 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 human rights.
In solidarity with 周幸彤
In solidarity with 周幸彤
釋放周幸彤
釋放周幸彤
In solidarity with all human rights defenders
In solidarity with all human rights defenders
釋放所有政治犯
釋放所有政治犯
In solidarity with all human rights defenders
In solidarity with all human rights defenders
釋放所有政治犯
釋放所有政治犯
We are now going to play some music for Hong Kong. We can sing together. 光復香港 ，Fight for freedom，
Stand with Hong Kong，
Fight for freedom，
Stand with Hong Kong，
光復香港，光復香港。
中共，滅中共，消滅中共。
Our next speaker is Daniel Low, a representative of the CCP. He's a Singaporean British actor, director, playwright and musician. 以後落嚟我哋嘅發言嘉賓係 Daniel Low， 係 Workers Against the CCP 嘅代表。佢係一位演員、導演、編劇同埋音樂家。For people standing in the front, maybe we could sit down soon, so people at the back could see you. 企喺前面嘅朋友咧可以坐低㗎啦，我哋等後邊嘅人咧，我哋睇到我哋台上。
Okay, so thank you very much. My name's Daniel Yorklow. I'm here representing Workers Against the CCP. Some of you will have seen the magnificent performance art earlier from China Deviant. I work as a performer, but I'm just letting you know now, I have no performance planned today. So if somebody runs onto the stage and attacks me, it's not an act, so please feel free to come onto the stage and help me. In fact, I would love you to do that. I'm here representing Workers Against the CCP. We're a trade unionist organisation who campaign for workers' rights in China and Xinjiang and Tibet. We protest every second Sunday outside Covent Garden Apple store against Apple's repression of workers in Xinjiang and labour rights organisers across China. I'm going to tell you quickly. So the Communist Party of China likes to take possession of the Chinese identity. All Chinese are supposed to be the same, and we're all ruled by them. So I was born here. My father's from Singapore. My mother's white British, so I'm of mixed heritage. And I was told at an early age that I was Chinese, and I didn't know what that word meant, except I got called names every day at school. I tell you when I really did feel Chinese, though, was on June the 4th, 1989. I was at drama school. I was staying in some sort of student dormitory. We had a tiny little television. You know, that television was old-fashioned even in the 1989. That was old-fashioned. The screen, some of you have probably got bigger screens on your mobile phones now, and the reception was awful. But I watched it happen on the news, and I can't even tell you the visceral sense of people who were like me, a long way away, suffering and dying for daring to speak up, for daring to raise their voices, for daring to dream of a better world. You know, I felt Chinese in that moment. Then there, it changed me forever. And as we go on, we see the way the Chinese Communist Party has their brutal repression of Tibet, their brutal repression of Xinjiang, more recently their brutal repression of Hong Kong, and what they'd like to do to Taiwan. And they would like us to forget all the atrocities they've committed, particularly June 4th, 1989. It's completely blacked out. So it will just disappear into history if they have their way. It'll just vanish. And then our lives become cheap. Our dreams become cheap. Our aspirations become cheap. Our expression becomes cheap. So thank you for coming out today. They cannot do this unless we acquiesce with them. So I say do not acquiesce. Keep remembering. Keep speaking out. Every year, June 4th, we will never forget. Thank you very much. Never ever forget.
Our last speaker in person today is Cheryl Brooks, Amnesty International China Directors. 我哋最後一位現場講嘢嘅嘉賓咧係 Cheryl Brooks， 佢係 Amnesty International China 嘅 Directors。
Thank you for coming out today and for joining us on this important occasion. I just want to recognize the courage it has taken every single person who has come up here and spoken to you and helped to draw this through line from Beijing and Tiananmen Square in 1989 all the way up through Hong Kong of 2019 to the white paper protests of 2022. For each of you who have come up and spoken, we understand what that can take. We put out a report just in early May that spoke to students from mainland China and Hong Kong that documented the kinds of risks that they worried about, the kind of isolation that they faced, the mental health impacts. And so for each of you who are here wondering if this is the right place to be, I just want to say that your fears are valid, and that every time you come out, that you're able to take one step forward to speak up for human rights, even in a small way, as Eleanor Roosevelt famously said, quietly and close to home. This is so valuable, and we see that and recognize that. I want to just speak very quickly about how Tiananmen has been intertwined in my life. I'm in a sort of middle generation. I remember 1989, but I don't remember seeing Tiananmen. I remember seeing, as a toddler, the Berlin Wall coming down. I remember seeing the Soviet Union break up. I remember learning that maps and atlases that we had at our house could suddenly, overnight, become inaccurate. And I think this was when I really learned about the power of people calling for respect and for representation. When I was an exchange student in Hong Kong, in Beijing first, we didn't talk about Tiananmen. It was hush-hush. The conversations we had with our classmates maybe spoke about soldiers, about missing cousins, and then quickly moved on. If we went to Tiananmen Square, an hour-long ride across the city on a bus, we mostly saw tourist groups and hawkers and long, low metal barricades the length of the avenue. Not many years after that, I was a tutor for Chinese political history classes. And I realized two things. I realized first that the professors and the scholars that I looked up to had learned about and experienced Tiananmen viscerally, themselves, or with friends, or classmates, or their own professors. And I learned that the students we were teaching, in many cases, weren't even born in 1989. They barely knew where to start when we spoke about Tiananmen. And it occurred to me how strange it must be to have been born into a world where this level of injustice could happen, but where its memory is so effectively suppressed. In my career, I've not had the good fortune to meet many people who were there on the square that day. I've not had the chance to speak to Ding Zilin or many of the mothers of those who died or were disappeared in China's prison system. But I did have and do have every day, and I am so thankful for this, the chance to meet people who were inspired by what happened on Tiananmen Square, by those who came out day after day in the spring of 1989 and who stood up for freedom, who called for a change in their government, who wanted to participate in making their country a better place. These people who are now in jail, out of jail but still under surveillance, facing charges in interminable pretrial detention, whether we're talking about Zhao Hongtong in Hong Kong, whether we're talking about filmmaker Chen Pinlin, who's currently facing a court date next week. I urge all of you to stand with me and to say, it is not a crime to commemorate Tiananmen. It is our duty. We remember June 4th.
Thank you, Shara. A slight change of schedule. We have one more speaker in person today, who is Dara Turing, who is a Tibetan activist in London. 我哋而家會再有多一位發言者，佢係Dara Turing，係一個喺倫敦嘅西藏社運人士。
Thank you, sir. It was the last minute. I haven't prepared anything, but you know, we all share the same pain. We have the same goal. We have the same suffering, so I don't need to prepare anything because I can feel you, I can understand you. Today, especially this week, 1989, is one of the darkest period in the history of China. Communist China has committed a crime against humanity, killing, massacre, torture their own students, their own children. For God's sake, they have been killing their own children. How can we forget this? We will never forget Tiananmen Square. Tiananmen Square is a massacre. Whole world knows. No matter what China tried to censor, China tried to erase the history, but together we are united here to remind the world that was happened in 1989. Millions of Chinese students were killed. That was fact. So we will pass this message to all over the world, to our young generation, and we'll keep this fight continue. We keep this fight alive. Exactly same thing happened in 1959. Same troops, same regime, same communist massacred Tibetan people. That's how we lost our country. Same thing happened in Hong Kong recently. Now Hong Kong is no more Hong Kong. It used to be a democratic Hong Kong, now it's no more. It's like a Beijing-run Hong Kong. We don't need that. Hong Kong is not China. Tibet is not China. So we stand together to remember what happened in 1989. We must remember this, and we must remind to the world Tiananmen Square massacre did happen. Even though in the Chinese schools it is completely deleted from their school lesson, they don't know anything about it. But it's our duty to teach, to educate everyone what happened in China, in Beijing, in Tiananmen Square, in Tibet, what happened in Hong Kong, what's happening with like Uyghur Muslims. More than 1 million Uyghur Muslims are still in concentration camps, still going on. Around like more than 1 million Tibetan children have been separated from their parents. Recently, they were forced and put in a colonial boarding school. China, the CCP is trying their best to erase the history of Tibet by erasing the culture, by brainwashing our young Tibetan children. So this is going on right now. So together, I request my brothers and sisters from Hong Kong, from mainland China, from pro-democratic, from Taiwan, from Uyghur, everyone, anybody who believe in human rights, let's defend the human rights together, let's fight for freedom together, and together we will take down the CCP. Now let's make a little noise so that we can send a direct message to CCP. Down, down, CCP! Down, down! CCP. No more PRC! No more! PRC. Down, down! CCP. No more! PRC. Down, down! CCP. No more! PRC. Free Hong Kong! 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 Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free China! Free China! Free China! Free China! Thank you, brothers and sisters. Thank you.
Today, June 4th, 35th anniversary commemoration protest in London will be finishing with a playback, a segment from She's in Jail, a documentary on Zhou Hengtong. Hong Kong marks the first known arrest under Basic Law Article 23. 6 people were arrested for allegedly publishing seditious social media posts targeting a sensitive date. The 6 people including Zhou Hengtong, a former leader of the annual commemoration vigil in Hong Kong, who has already been arbitrarily detained for nearly 1,000 days, as well as her mothers, her co-workers, her friends, and supporters. Prior to these arrests, a group of independent filmmakers interviewed Zhou Hengtong and the 2 others who have been recently arrested, including 2 Tiananmen activists, Wang Chaohua and Lau Gayi. These interviews were produced into a documentary called She's in Jail. We will have a brief audio screening from Zhou Hengtong's 2 other activists, Kwang and Lau, as well as a letter from her fiancé, an imprisoned activist and the writer, Ye Du. This short audio screening will be only in Cantonese. 基本法第23條首案有6人被捕，呢6個人因針對一個所謂敏感日子，涉嫌發布煽動性社交媒體內容被捕。被捕者包括前支聯會主席周幸彤，即使他個人已經坐監將近1000日，另外仲有佢媽媽、同事、朋友同埋支持者。喺一連串逮捕事件發生前，有一群獨立電影製作人採訪咗周幸彤以及最近被捕嘅另外2個人，包括前支聯會常委關振邦同劉嘉怡。呢啲採訪成一部叫做《幸彤在監獄》嘅紀錄片。我哋會將撮要播放周幸彤同佢2位戰友關振邦同劉嘉怡嘅錄音，以及佢嘅未婚夫一個同樣被囚禁嘅維權作家野道所寫嘅情信。呢段錄音只會以粵語播放。
我覺得從來就唔係孤軍作戰嘅，呢個我覺得要強調，但係好多人唔會係記喺台面啫。因為講法真係唔係1年嘅事或者2年嘅事啊嘛，係中國共產黨嘅管治模式就係咁啦，大家要面對。咁你仲諗住喺香港生活落去嘅人，其實你冇乜選擇嘅，你就係要學行呢個咁嘅體制咯。咁我覺得一直係遇到好多朋友係想諗緊點樣喺而家個新時代下邊去做嘢嘅。即係我覺得我自己嘅狀態係盡早啫，即係我唔想俾人講嗰個印象就係坐監就係一切嘅結束，所以我就會好着意係要繼續講嘢啦，起碼繼續維持所謂可見度啦，就唔係因為你坐監就會令我消失嘅，尤其喺現代嘅社會下，其實你要消失一個人唔係咁容易嘅。
周幸彤咧，我同佢嘅認識係佢讀完大學翻嚟香港。咁我當其時都係支聯會嘅常委，咁佢翻咗嚟之後咧，就去咗支聯會幫手。咁我哋大家多咗見面，多咗一啲一齊做嘢嘅機會，慢慢熟絡咗。佢係一個不知不覺嘅傻大姐啦，不過佢就俾人個感覺就重情重義。佢做起嘢上嚟咧，佢可以好認真、好專注，但係佢亦都可以咧放低佢自己嘅身份，即係好似冇包袱咁啊！大家無分彼此，好真誠咁對待。同埋我知道佢都有去幫好多，即係19年之後嘅抗爭者。
好多圈內嘅朋友咁係有各種嘅法律上嘅問題要處理嘅嘛，尤其而家面對國安法，即係而家係鋪天蓋地嘅指控對所有喺社運圈嘅朋友喎。知道自己仲有好多位可以做，你可以努力去談多幾次監嘅時候，你就覺得要逼住要做好多嘢。
我去讀法律都係為咗去建設民主嘅運動，去推動民主嘅運動。而家佢喺而家呢條民主路上嘅時候，佢需要喺另外一個角色、另外一個崗位去付出自己。所以律師只係佢一份職業，唔係佢一份志業。民主嘅路、民主嘅運動先至係佢一份志業。我同佢朋友啦、戰友啦。有啦，打邊爐有啦，喺一個民主人權路上嘅好夥伴啦，係絕對預咗有一日其中一個人係會入咗去坐監，或者一齊入咗去坐監。無論佢入咗去坐監都好，佢係絕對唔會放棄言論自由，尤其是面對 4啦，面對呢30幾年嚟支聯會做嘅嘢啊，或者香港人點咗30幾年嘅燭光啦，如果要將佢定罪，佢絕對係冇可能就咁啞忍，或者就咁覺得要接受，佢接受唔到，所以呢一個係 campaign 嘅一部分，佢必須會行嘅一步咯。
同有你相伴是造物主对我今生最大的恩赐吧。即使咫尺天涯，即使你现在在大榄小监狱，我在天朝大监狱，但我们彼此思念从不止息。我们原来对未来无数的想象，都在时代大潮的冲击下超乎我们的预估。我们曾想象过香港的自由会被温水煮青蛙慢慢消耗干净，却想不到今日如疾风暴雨般急剧变化。我们曾想象过你会以家眷的身份为身陷令物的我奔走，却想不到今日我现在到了武汉，想起我们曾经相约在春天到这里看樱花。现已盛夏，花事不在，你亦在我们从未遇到的彻骨酷冬中置身囚笼。我是在给监狱里的你写信，你说给你一场浪漫的求婚。世上总有人想出千奇百怪的求婚方式，但是什么比得上你在小监狱，我在大监狱？比得上在这互联网时代让你的朋友们成为传输的鸿雁？比得上在今天7月13号小波的忌日，这我们共同记忆的特殊日子？比得上在这黎明前最黑暗的此刻更加浪漫，更加让我们铭记于心的呢？你在我的灵魂里为你吟唱的歌谣为证，以监狱的审查信件的人员为证，以所有看到此信以及所有关心你处境的人们为证。同，你愿意嫁给我？爱你的杜杜。
無懼跨境打壓，
無懼跨境打壓，
無忘六四抗爭，
無忘六四抗爭，
無懼跨境打壓，
無懼跨境打壓，
無忘六四抗爭。
無忘六四抗爭。
Remember Tiananmen.
Remember Tiananmen.
Remember Tiananmen.
Remember Tiananmen.
In solidarity against repression.
In solidarity against repression.
In solidarity against repression.
In solidarity against repression.
同一世界，同一人權。同一世界，同一人權。
同一世界，同一人權。
Human rights are universal.
Human rights are universal.
Human rights are universal.
Human rights are universal.
June 4th, we will never forget.
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 無忘六四，薪火相傳。
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 June 4th, we will never forget. Stop repression in China and Taiwan. Stop repression in China and Taiwan. 光復香港，光復香港，時代革命 ，Fight for freedom, fight for freedom. In solidarity with 周亨通。In solidarity with 周亨通，釋放周亨通，釋放周亨通。In solidarity with all human rights defenders. In solidarity with all human rights defenders. 釋放鄒幸彤，釋放所有政治犯，釋放鄒幸彤，釋放所有政治犯，無懼跨境打壓，無忘六四抗爭，無懼跨境打壓，無忘六四抗爭。多謝大家支持。This concludes the events that we have planned for today. And massive thanks to all the speakers and all our attendees today for participating with us. Please proceed in an orderly fashion towards the exit and do not rush. Thank you very much for coming. If you have a placard with you, please return it to the front of the stage, please. 如果手上有 placard 嘅朋友咧，可以交翻去台前，同埋咧帶走你垃圾啦。If you have any rubbish with you, please bring it with you.
OK， 咁活動而家就結束，咁但係我哋會採訪一下吳兆達啦。就請大家等一等。係。係咪？係可以點樣都 OK， 只要向住陽光就 OK。
你驚唔驚陣間佢又講嘢？而家做緊 live。係嘅。
即係頭先都見到有好多嚟自各界人士咧，有嗰個give speech 啦。咁你覺得即係話喺47人案同埋鄒幸彤而家因為23條被捕啦，我哋呢個活動嘅意義會何在？你覺得個影響會幾大？
嗱，我哋見到即係6·4已經成為咗一個政治禁語啊，即係連回憶都係有罪啊。咁啊，鄒幸彤同埋另外6位被拘捕。係23條立法之後首次施行呢個法例，咁我哋即係好清楚睇到，其實政權一路都係講大話，因為好明顯23條立法就係唔單止係即係壓制緊我哋嘅集會言論、傳媒、遊行示威嘅自由，而家連思想自由咧都要剝奪埋。鄒幸彤同埋佢哋嘅朋友做緊啲咩嘢啫？佢哋即係回憶89年。當年佢哋嘅親身經歷，同埋一路多年以嚟支聯會所舉辦嘅活動，佢哋點樣籌備嚇？其中即係遇到嘅種種嘅事情同埋故事，點解連呢啲嘅回憶都變成一種罪呢？喺今時今日嘅香港，所以係非常之荒謬嘅。幾日之前我哋見到喺47人初選案裏頭，我哋好多嘅戰友，佢係被法庭定罪，根本赤裸裸就係對佢哋爭取民主嘅政治報復。咁所以即係我哋係非常之心痛嘅。咁但係喺香港，即係已經唔可以再有6·4嘅集會，連點起燭光都係一種罪嘅時候，咁我哋喺海外，我哋有自由可以發聲，我哋有自由喺海外可以發聲嘅時候，咁我哋冇理由去放棄咯。當香港嘅人佢面對咁大嘅政治壓力，甚至乎喺監獄裏邊受到即係囚禁，亦都係面對緊一場咁惡毒嘅政治審判，佢哋仍然冇放棄到自己嘅信念，甚至乎係堅持無罪嘅立場。咁我哋喺海外，我哋有一口氣嘅時候，要繼續延續拒絕遺忘嘅力量，話俾全世界人知道，香港人並冇放棄到咯。
咁我哋而家再嘗試去揾下，睇下有冇其他人係即係願意接受講兩句啦。
即使軟禁
諗呢次活動都差唔多啦，咁就好多謝大家即係在線一直收睇啦。好，大家再見啦。